Okay, can everybody grab their seats? We are running incredibly late. It is in fact 12:30. Hadi lütfen herkes otursun. Başlayalım. 12:30. Belki 10'a kadar devam edeceğiz. Konuşmacılar hazır mı? Pars Bey. Evet. Tamam. Zaten daha önceki iki panelde de özellikle ikinci bölümde de Kuzey Irak'ın potansiyelli enerji denklemindeki rolü gündeme gelmişti. Bu panelin başlığı Irak'tan petrol ve doğal gaz ihracı, Türkiye ve uluslararası piyasalara etkisi, bölgesel istikrarın önemi. İlk konuşmacımız Pars Kutay Bey olacak. Sıfatı Genel Enerji'de Kamu İlişkileri Başkanı. Ayrıca ben de dahil çoğumuzun yakın arkadaşı. Sunuşunu sabırsızlıkla bekliyoruz. Ondan sonra Tahir Ürsel Bey konuşacak. Pars Bey, buyurun. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Bülent. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make a short briefing, not solely concentrate on Iraq, but try to give you a general picture. In the 150 odd years oil and gas industry has been in existence, there are three recurring themes that have shaped the industry, and the players suspect always will. One is geopolitics, which is widely discussed today, oil and gas prices, and technology. Geopolitics has always defined the field of play. There are countless examples, as you all know. The rise of OPEC in the 60s and 70s, restricting access in the Middle Eastern markets, forcing the Seven Sisters to look for oil in Alaska and the North Sea. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 90s, opening Russia and the countries of the FSU, the former Soviet Union, such as Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, to international oil companies. The opening and then just as abruptly the closing of Venezuela in the 90s, and of course the fall of Saddam Hussein and the reopening of Iraq to the international oil companies in early 2000. To a large extent, oil and gas prices have also been driven by politics, and they in turn have encouraged and enabled great technological advances. The rise of OPEC more than tripled oil prices and made the North Sea and Alaska commercial. The industry then created the technology that allowed them to be exploited. The early 90s was marked by great strides in technology and seismic acquisition and processing and drilling. This enabled the industry to begin its march into ever deeper water and ever higher pressures and temperatures, and opened up deep water West Africa and the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico. The last decade, we've seen an extraordinary revolution in shale gas development in the US, a trend that we all believe we'll see repeated in many other parts of the world in the years to come. Whilst it had a lot to do with the lightly regulated US market, energy market, it was the very high gas prices back in 2002 and 2003 that stimulated the market to respond. In this case, the market response has been so spectacular that gas prices in the US have collapsed, with the full consequences for the global energy market still to play out. Some things are clear. Gas and coal prices in the US will never again reach the levels they did only a few years ago. The US is sitting on an infinite supply of relatively clean, low-cost energy and may well become a net exporter of energy by 2025. It will give a major boost to its economic competitiveness, already seeing a major increase in investment in manufacturing. It will also be the only industrialized country to achieve its Kyoto carbon dioxide reduction targets despite not having been a signatory to the agreement. This is the, I believe, power of the free market. And of course, the industry also responds to low prices. As referred to in the previous sessions, we have super majors, international oil companies, we have these national oil companies in the sector, but we have independents as well. One of the most interesting trends of the last decade or so has been the rise of the independents, like the Turkish company Gene Energy. It was the mums and pops that opened up shale gas in the US, not the super majors. It was the independents that opened up the recent stratigraphic oil plays in the West African margin. It was the independents that opened up the East African Rift Valley and more recently East African Indian Ocean margin for gas. And closer to home, it is the independents that have led the charge in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Why is that? I'm sure we all have our own theories, but I attribute it to three things. First, high oil and gas prices. If you get it right, there's a lot of money to be made in the oil and gas sector right now. Secondly, when combined with today's global capital markets, it means risk capital is freely available to explorers with good ideas and ability to sell their story, such as the Gene Energy story today. And thirdly, a legacy of risk aversion and low commodity price expectation among the super majors. Let me begin to draw this to a conclusion by returning to the three themes I started with: geopolitics, oil and gas prices, and technology, and speculate a little on what the future might hold. Beginning with geopolitics, OPEC will remain in place and retain its role as the oil market manager. Russian state dominance of its oil and gas sector will remain. The US will not become energy independent, but North America as a whole will become a net exporter of energy by the middle of the next decade. China's dependence on the Middle East for its energy needs will continue to rise and cause it to forge new relationships in the region. Let me just shortly dwell on the prices. On oil prices, demand will continue to rise as more and more of the world's population enjoys a middle-class way of life. $100 is the norm. The risk is the upside. There's plenty of oil in the world, as we all know, but in many places, politics will prevent it from being exploited as rapidly and efficiently as it could. Much of the Middle East, political-wise, especially Iraq and Iran, are problematic. In Brazil, local content requirements, the political impediment. Oil sands of Canada, environmental lobbyists, another source of problem. Gas prices, I am more cautious. US shale gas is a game changer for the world, as it perfectly fits into the topic of this roundtable of today. Gas prices in US look like they'll stabilize around $4 or $5 MMBTU. Inevitable that the link to oil price will break down. Already seeing that in recent contracts signed with Japanese buyers. We will see in the years to come Henry Hub-linked prices in contracts. Major implications for some of the more exotic Australian LNG schemes and for Gazprom and their European market. Whilst I don't expect large volumes of gas to be exported from North America, some will mainly come from Canada. It has the potential as the marginal supply to be the price-setting mechanism in what is today a fairly open and freely traded, albeit relatively small market. Let me put it this way. Henry Hub at $4 plus $3 processing and $2 shipping gets you a landed gas price in Europe and Asia of around $7 to $8 MMBTU, million British thermal unit. It has the potential to reset European prices, and as I said, will create a challenge for some LNG schemes currently under development and sets a challenging bar for forthcoming LNG schemes in East Africa to compete with. I'll make it short before the lunch. Against this backdrop, let me dwell shortly on KRG Iraq gas play. Like the Sicilian prince in Lampedusa's epic novel The Leopard, the people in our geography know that if we want things to stay as they are, things will have to change. But this time in history, things are supposedly a bit different. As we all observe, things do not and cannot stay as they are, and there's a constant change in this troubled region triggered by social and peripheral dynamics. As a result of the Arab Spring and US withdrawal from Iraq, a new security and energy environment, as well as a realignment of politics is suggested in this part of the world, Turkey and the Kurdistan region of Iraq getting closer. In fact, the inspiring process of the spring around has instigated this transformative framework in which relations between Turkey and the KRG is being built almost from the scratch. Needless to say, oil and gas is the driving element in this reconfigured structure of relationship, thanks to dozens of investors in the KRG, oil and gas industry, today represents a significant potential for the years to come. Let me finish with some figures. There are now prospective volumes of oil, around 2 million barrels per day, and around 30 BCM of gas available for international markets in a decade. The major challenge will no doubt be the overall political uncertainty in Iraq and its potential ramification on the KRG's own positioning. Incidentally, the KRG has so far displayed an impressive performance, both domestically and internationally. However, near-term developments or lack thereof in Baghdad will be kept under constant review by the international investors for sure. Let me just conclude my remarks. As things stand today, it still remains to be seen how the politics in Iraq give shape to future oil and gas policies of this country, given the current pressures from within and outside. In other words, unlocking the gas value depends on politics in a notoriously volatile part of the world, and resolving a legal impasse in Iraq is in the interest of every party involved. This said, as a concluding remark, dear Bülent, Turkey cannot simply stay indifferent to a source in its immediate neighborhood at a time when its power demand is at its peak and energy import costs are at the highest. Thank you.
Thanks, Pars. You know, we can get back to this after the second presentation, but I can't resist asking you the question right now before we lose the focus on what your company is doing in northern Iraq. You talked about the transformative framework of relations between Turkey and the KRG, and you talked about how oil and gas are the drivers in this process. Now, you're a Turkish company, but now you become an Anglo-Turkish company, and you quoted on the London stock market. But how much of a role has Genel played in this process of bringing the two countries together, and how much of a role do you plan to play? You don't have to answer it now, but I just wanted to register that as my initial comment to your very good presentation. So, would you like to respond now? Maybe it might be a good idea. Go ahead, and then we can continue with the second presentation later.
Okay, Bülent, thank you. Buna Türkçe cevap vereyim çünkü ilk turda özellikle gazeteci konuklarımızdan benzer sorular gelmişti. Genel Enerji'nin Türkiye ile Irak-Kürt bölgesi arasındaki yakınlaşmada bir rolü olup olmadığı sorusu enteresan bir soru aslında. Ama tahmin ediyorum bölgede en fazla varlığa sahip, bölgenin en büyük şirketi olarak, bir de şu an belki takip ettiğinizi varsayarak söyleyeyim, tek üreticisi olarak bu süreçte rolü hani siyasi anlamda değil ama belki teknik anlamda olmuştur denilebilir. Çünkü sahada operasyon yapan bir şirket olarak sahanın jeolojisini, sahadaki bölge genelindeki varlıkları en iyi bilen grubuz. Dolayısıyla buradaki varlıkları, ileride olabilecekleri karar mercileriyle paylaştık talepleri üzerine. Konuşmamda çok kısaca belirttim. Aslında prospektler daha da yukarı ama gerek Uluslararası Enerji Ajansı'nın yakın tarih raporundan gördüğünüz, gerekse işte birçok başka kaynakta refere edilen, çok da kullanılan şöyle bir gerçek var Kuzey Irak'ta. O da şudur: 45 milyar varil petrol rezervi var. Aşağı yukarı Irak'ta varsayılan 3,5 trilyon metreküplük gaz varlığının, gaz rezervinin %85'inin de kuzeyde olduğu genel kabul görüyor. Satın alma işlemleri dün itibariyle %100 hisselerini bitirdiğimiz Miran gaz sahası yaklaşık 5 sene içerisinde Türkiye'ye 10 milyar metreküp gaz verebilecek bir sahadır. Kuzey Irak'tan Türkiye'ye 10 ila 20 sene arasındaki bir süreçte 30 milyar metreküp gaz gelebilir. Şimdi bu rakamlara baktığınızda çok siyasi sonuçları böyle bir kararın onlardan arındırarak söylüyorum. Tamamen teknik sektörü ilgilendiren yönüyle Türkiye gibi ithalata dayalı enerji sektörü olan bir ülkede böyle bir varlığa kayıtsız kalınması düşünülemez. Dolayısıyla Türkiye'deki karar vericiler de özellikle Amerikan şirketlerinin yoğun olarak bölgeye girmesinden sonra bölgeye ilgilerini artırdılar. Daha yakından bakmaya başladılar ve tahmin ediyorum bakıldıkça görüldü ki burada Türkiye'nin ve Türkiye üzerinden belki komşu coğrafyaların Avrupa Birliği veyahut Avrupa Birliği üyesi olmayan bazı ülkeler gibi sabahki session'da refere edilen bazı ihtiyaçlarının karşılanması mümkün olabilecek. Dolayısıyla hani oyun kurmak, oyuncu olmak, bunlar Türkiye'de telaffuz edildiği zaman belki dostlarımızdan, müttefiklerimizden biraz vehimle bakılıyor, görülüyor olabilir. Türkiye'nin böyle bir iddiası olabilir gerçi ama yani böyle bir iddia aslında fiilen kendisini bence tanımlıyor. Bu coğrafya Türkiye'nin yakın komşularına, yakın komşularında olan bitenlere, özellikle enerji sektörü bağlamında söylüyorum, siyasi bir mesaj vermeye çalışmıyorum, kayıtsız kalamayacağı bir coğrafi lokasyondur. Şimdilik isterseniz bu kadar da bitireyim sorunuzun cevabını. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, Pars. Next speaker is Tahir Ursal, whose company, Silsa Oil, is active in Iraq. After his presentation, we will go to the comments and questions. And I haven't forgotten the question that was addressed to me by Mehmet Öğütçü about the U.S. position on this. Tahir Bey, buyurun.
I think I'll continue in English as well, as some of the other speakers have done so. Well, firstly, thanks very much to Marmara Foundation, for Dr. Akkarsver for the invitation, and Strategico and Kalem Journal too. And of course, I think I should extend that thank you to my dear friend Necdet, who has been very much working hands-on on getting this forum together. A small correction, if I may, on who Silso Oil is. Well, Silso Oil is not really working in Iraq, but actually is a company. No, well, it's an old company for sure, but actually we are an independent company, as Pars Bey have put it, established in Texas and looking for gas in Louisiana rather than Iraq. But hopefully one day we may go there as well too and look for the riches, and who knows, maybe we can strike gold as Genel Energy have done so. But rather, after BP, since 2009, I'm in Iraq with partners, working in the field of electricity. And of course, being an ex-oil and gas person, I could not help it, but start being interested in oil and gas as well. I have a presentation to make, I'm sorry to say, that actually, which is all slides and things. As probably that's going to get ready. It is rather technical, but I would say that actually let's have a look into this, because of two things. One is numbers are important so that you can drive proper derivations, conclusions from it. And the second thing is about mostly in Turkey, when you say Iraq, then that rather means different things to different people. Some people have really in mind northern Iraq, KRG, the Kurdistan region, and for others it is the global Iraq, etc. If you're political, if you're energy, if you're making trade, it is different. But I think my presentation is more sort of for us to understand why the totality of Iraq is important for the world. Will we be able to get something up?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as we still waited, I'll continue and. And can I have the clicker as well? Yok mu? Okay. Yeah, next one, please. Okay, and I will extend my thanks to Fatih Birol as well in this forum, because he and his team has done great work on Iraq. I've been there for 4 years, and there were many things that actually I myself wasn't able to understand much. And if you haven't done so, if you're interested in Iraq, please go and read this report. It is really truly extensive and covers the whole issue very well. So I'll try to give my own interpretation to certain slides of it, but I will use his slides, and he has given me his personal permission to use it as well. So thank him for that too. Well, this is about the world energy demand. We are just trying to get it warm up into the issue, but very speedily. The 450 scenario, unfortunately, I don't see it's going to happen. And the oil demand or the energy demand is going to rise in the world. And if you look into this further slide, the oil and gas continues to dominate, and they are really going to rise, although the oil is taking a lesser rise than gas. And if you look into regions, then OECD is less, and other countries like China, India, Middle East, etc., is more. But let's stay there for a while. You can see that actually, for example, although OECD is getting less, their import dependency is becoming larger. As you can see, the arrow for European Union going higher. Japan staying where it is, and United States is now becoming less energy dependent, and in fact, sufficient on energy on its own. Needless to say, China and India are increasing. And this is about oil globally. And if you look oil globally, you can see that actually the currently producing fields are diminishing in an alarming rate, if you like, to 2035. And therefore, new funds are very critical for the world to come up with the demand which we are seeing up there. So where is that going to come from? And I think this is the slide which we have to look a bit. You can see that it's not going to come from non-OPEC. In the past, non-OPEC has been instrumental in supplying very significantly world's oil demand, but now that's diminishing. So what's happening now is that OPEC is going to come up with the extra volume. And in this, you can see that the rest of the OPEC is going to come up 42%, and Iraq is going to come up with 45% of the expected increase. This is why, actually, Iraq is critically important to the world. And in fact, if you listen to Fatih Birol again, he says in his speeches that there are 3 important countries in the world: Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. And actually, this is exactly why. Of course, from an energy perspective, Iraq is so important. Well, as every study is, there are sort of central scenario, low case, and a high case. This is the central scenario. In this one, you can see that the current volume is going to increase from 3 million barrels per day to more than 8. And you can then see the regions as well. The north of Iraq is going to contribute roughly 20% of it from now and also in the future too. There is then rest of it, which is 80% of the country, which is very important for the world. And then on the right of it, you can see that it is about the oil exports. It's about the oil exports, which you can see that actually it is mainly going to go to Asia. Because there were early comments that actually it is going to go somewhere else, but actually Iraqi oil is mostly going to be destined for the Asian markets. It is producing 3 million barrels now, and it's exporting 2.4 to be exact today. And this figure is not really any higher than what Iraq has done in the past. In 1969, Iraq was able to do 3.5, much more than what it's doing now. And the volumes have come down, and hopefully it's going to increase again. And there were various attempts in between for Iraq to increase the volume in the 80s, in the 90s, but they were very unsuccessful. So I think this is the third attempt for Iraq to make it increase into substantial volumes. We all know that actually there are huge reserves, but will it happen? So that's something we shall see as well. But if all this happens, this is what Iraq is going to be all about. Iraq is going to generate something like 5 trillion revenues from this to 2035. And therefore, Iraq is a country which is next to us, which is going to be difficult to ignore. Such a riches are going to be turned into economy for development of Iraq. And in comparison, what Iraq may be is in 2035, then it reaches the level of Saudi Arabia now, which is, of course, very, very significant. Too many numbers. I'm not going to get into any of this, but it's just the bottom line. Bottom line, you can see that it is about the oil reserves, which is there, which is 142. But then, there are predictions that actually it is in fact much higher, which is 232 number. And out of that, 197 could be explored, which is roughly giving about 1/6 of the whole world reserves in now Iraq. Looking at the scenarios, we are measuring Iraq coming from 3 million to 8 million or even 10. Could this happen? Well, this is a comparison looking at it. What other countries have done so in a similar time frame of 8 years. And on the high case, if Iraq is very successful, it could match what Saudi Arabia has done from 1966 to 1974. But will it happen? Personally, I doubt it, because Saudi Arabia and what Iraq now is are vastly different. But hopefully, central scenario would be caught, or they will manage to deliver that, which is what Russia has done, which then you think that actually perhaps Iraq should be and could do as well. Well, of course, no such massive exercise, if you may call it, is going to be without any investment, and this is kind of the investment level needed for the economy, which is $530 billion, a huge amount, is needed for development of Iraqi fields. So where are they going to get into, and this is kind of worth looking into, is it's all yellow is oil, and then you see something in between, which is gas processing and pipeline, and this is what is of perhaps interest for today's session. Currently, we'll come to it, but currently today Iraq is producing something like 20 BCM a year of gas already. And it is hard to believe, and one pulls one's own hair, if you like, as we say in Turkish, that actually 11 BCMA of that is flared. It just goes in the air, and they just burn it. It's an enormous amount. And therefore, that capacity improvement is absolutely needed so that actually gas is captured and used for whatever means and purposes are. And on top of it, you see some refining capacity improvement for a period only, till 2020, 22, etc. And the rest of it is really about oil and gas. On gas, it is gas processing. A moment to stay here, because when you talk of Iraq, this is what comes to mind. Yeah, but it's a very dangerous place, isn't it? Well, I guess you may be right. Of course, things are happening there, and wish that actually they don't happen. I mean, the last week, for example, there was yet another bomb which went on in Baghdad, and it is a disturbance. But if you truly look into numbers, these are by per month basis, the fatalities happening because of the clashes or attacks happening in the country. What we perhaps remember is the middle of the slide, which is 2007 and 8, and running more than 300 a month. Now it's come down to very sort of small numbers. Of course, they are important, but they are very small numbers. And if you are in the country, believe me, you feel it. You feel the improvement, at least I did feel from 2009 to now, that actually it is different. Things are happening, things are progressing, and in fact, then therefore the investors are going there too. It is going to be a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge on many fronts. For example, water. For improvement of oil fields, you need water injection. Otherwise, you will not be able to get the lift you want. So you need massive amounts of water. We are talking here, as much as oil produced, you have to get that much of water into there as well, just roughly, I'm talking. And then this is a project. You have to run a 100-kilometer pipeline from the sea to bring water, which is going to cost you something like $12 billion. Is it feasible to be done? Could it be done? Yes. Saudi Arabia has recently done it. It could be done, but it's again what Iraq boils down to. It's about coordination of the projects and how they are implemented, how they are followed. If Iraq is able to deliver all this, then actually Iraq will be able to capture all this, what we hope it will. Again, just trying to show an example, though all these yellow spots are fields. They're massive. They're called supergiant fields. Not giant fields, supergiant fields. We'll see some of the figures of this now, but then, in order to get them out, Iraq has a very, very limited shoreline. You have to come up with structures. On the right-hand bottom, you see 2 offshore terminals. Again, they are billion-dollar investments. This is Al Basra oil terminal and Coral Amur offshore terminal. They are offshore structures trying to get the oil out into the world. These 2 terminals have now increased the capacity to nearly 4 million barrels per day for Iraq in total, I'm talking. And therefore, Iraq is not limited with export volumes thanks to these developments now. You can see that as sort of there is much ambiguity, much chaos still in a way in the country, things are happening there too. What compares to past is perhaps this table. In the past, Iraq has, they have tried to do it on their own, but this time different is, they tried to get, they decided that actually it would be better if they have international interest. And they have what they have opened rounds, and people came in, and then they have bid. But there were 4 rounds, starting from 2009 to 2012. And in these 4 rounds, 19 contracts were awarded. And these 19 contracts have what they call a plateau level, or a target level. And the target level, if you were to add them up, it comes to something like 12 million barrels per day, much more than the central case scenario. So actually, all these projects have at least the potential of producing a lot more than what the country may aspire to, which is, in this case, is 8. And I must say that actually, if you talk to Iraqi individuals, Iraq Iraqi politicians will tell you that actually by 2020, they will have 12 million, which is very difficult, which is Saudi Arabia has done in this short time frame. Whether Iraq can do in the current setup, it's difficult, but at least that's what they politically say that they will deliver. This is a picture of the fields, and again about the colors. On the left side, you can see that there are two fields, which is Kirkuk, which we all know, and in the south, Rumelia. These were the two fields which were producing oil for the country for since 1920s. And they really gave 80% of Iraqi oil. Now, new fields are coming into play. Okay, it is West Kurna, Zubair, Majnun, many more of them. But if you look into color, this time the difference is that actually it is the international oil companies which are in charge of the development of these contracts under what's called the technical service agreements. This is something to sort of well consider. The thinking is that actually if everything goes fine, central scenario is hit, it is good that actually oil price will stay at the IEA prediction of 125 at the end of the period, which is 2035. But then if Iraq is not able to deliver what Iraq says they will, then oil price is going to be higher, $15 is the prediction because of the tight market. So therefore, I think this is at least one reason why we all should be sort of hoping that Iraq will be hopefully delivering this project. Just trying to look into Iraq, what Iraq looks like, you can see that actually west of the country is basically there isn't much. Yep.
It's 12. Can you wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll jump into this slide, but you can see that actually Iraq is very much dependent on oil. Oil is the key, and that has to change really. And this slide is showing that actually the revenue share as percentage of GDP, although in the years to come, with the hope of diversification of the economy, will come down, it is still going to be more than 50%. So that's a big challenge for the country, because currently Iraq directly employs only 2% of the working population. This is an important thing. This is important for the social stability of the country, that actually Iraq has to create jobs, enough jobs to the population, and 2% is not enough. So therefore, there has to be other sectors coming into play. I'll skip this, but let's come to gas. Iraq, by 2035, is going to produce something like 90 BCMA, which is a huge amount. And therefore, it's going to come into the picture, as we can see, that actually it's going to be sixth major producer in the world, which is significant. But how much of that will we be really seeing in the international markets? And this is a picture trying to look into Iraq's own energy demand, which you can see that till 2010, it really lagged well behind of the rest of Middle East. This is the energy demand per capita. It is at 1 ton of oil equivalent 2010, whereas you can see that from 1980 to 2010, the rest of Middle East has done enormous progress, but then Iraq has stand still. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And also diversification too. Currently, the left is Iraq, which is showing that it is all oil. Whereas if you look into Middle East, which is on the right, actually you can see a more balanced portfolio that actually it is oil and gas is used as well. This is how the total demand in the country is going to change. Again, following the picture that I've shown before, demand is going to increase because it's a catching up to do. And new demand is going to be in the form of gas in terms of local demand. Oil is going to be exported, but gas is going to be used internally. Let's look into electricity generation to 2035. You can see that actually it is all gas. Okay? there's going to be very little of oil and no shortfall of generation. There will be plenty of generation capacity, which is coming up to something like 70 gigawatts by 2035. Okay, I'll skip these slides, but it is really trying to show that currently the electricity generation is really poor. In certain places, it is less than 12 hours a day delivered in the country, and 30% of the population still suffers in a big way. And this is a picture on the gas, the one which I'm saying that electricity energy generation will be hugely dependent on gas, and although 90 BCMA is going to be produced from these fields, it is going to be difficult. There is going to be about 20 BCMA to 2035. But then you have to look into something else, which is you have to look into how this gas is in the country. Gas comes in two ways in oil fields, which is one is associated, the other one is non-associated. Associated is, as you produce oil, you come with gas. Non-associated is just gas fields only. And this picture is important from Turkey perspective, because if you look into non-associated gas, i.e. gas, which is not necessarily dependent on any oil production, then you can see that actually most of the gas is on the north. And this is what Parsbey is saying. That there is potential in the north that could be delivered. The rest of the country, if they are successful in delivering the oil scenario, which is producing oil and taking into gas markets, yes, true that actually there will be lots of gas, which most of it is going to be used for electricity, but in the north it's a different picture. Not necessarily dependent on the oil picture, then you may come up with a different play, which is gas play, and then you may produce gas there. This is something I would like to stay for a while, because earlier there was a comment that actually Iraq's hands are tied for Turkey. Well, not quite so, I would say. You can see that in one of the previous pictures, I have shown you, very big offshore terminals taking all this oil out. This is one thing, and in diversification, Iraq is having multiple plays, which they are thinking of having pipelines to Syria, hopefully Syria becoming more stable at some stage, into Jordan or through Jordan or even Saudi Arabia. So there are plays actually for Iraq to diversify supply of all means. Of course, there's going to be Ceyhan, and Ceyhan going to be improved, but it is necessarily, both on the oil and gas, the two plays are important. It has to be go north, it has to go south. From south, Iraq will have a better price selling gas by LNG to world markets than taking all the gas to Europe. But it is a different picture for the north. Being so close to Turkey, being so close to the markets, then you may have a different scenario of getting your gas into. So this is exactly what I would like to sort of stay on and share with you, that actually when we think of Iraq, I think we really have to sometimes compartmentalize it and think of the differences of the north and south, how the fields are technically, and how the approaches are as well, technically as well. For example, if I dwell a bit, it is the central government has used technical contract agreements, technical service agreements, whereas the north, it is production sharing agreements, which is a totally different ballgame. In terms of electricity, the central government has gone into route of investing their own, and they have done EPCs, engineering procurement contracts, whereas the north has done IPPs. They have already done about 2 gigawatts of IPP in the north. So there are different approaches of what the north and the south is doing, and this is what Turkey has to well understand and perhaps play to the tune, if you like, for the need of Turkey trying to have gas. Well, I think I have done my remarks as I was speaking, so with pressure of time, I think I'll stop there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll refrain from my response to Mehmet Öğütçü, because I'm sure we're pressed for time. There must be some questions and comments from the floor, and maybe if we have time, I'll add it at the end. Anybody with any response to either of the two presentations? Right at the end, please.
Ben Pars Bey'e bir soru sormak istiyorum. İsmim Tuğçe Varol, bu arada Kalem Journal Editorial Board'undayım. Bu süreç içerisinde genel enerjinin Kuzey Irak'taki faaliyetleriyle ilgili süreç içerisinde karar mercileriyle görüştüğünüzü söylediniz. Bir de bu şimdi inşa etmekte olduğunuz bir boru hattı var. Bu boru hattı ile ilgili de görüştünüz mü? Biraz da bu boru hattından bilgi verir misiniz?
Açıkçası boru hattı inşa etmiyoruz şu an ama bir proje vardı. O da şu an üretim yaptığımız Tak sahasından Kerkük Yumurtalık boru hattının pompa istasyonu olan Hurmala'ya kamyonlarla petrolü taşıyorduk. Bunun önüne geçmek için gene Kerkük Yumurtalık'ın bir ölçüm istasyonu var Türkiye sınırına yakın Fişabur denilen bir noktada. Oraya bir boru hattı yapıp Tak üretimini Kerkük Yumurtalık hattına pompalanmak üzere Fişabur'a kadar götürecek bir boru hattı projesi geliştirdik. Ancak daha sonra bölgeye başka büyük uluslararası enerji firmalarının, petrol firmalarının girmesi sonrasında Kuzey Irak yönetiminin beklentileri değişti. Özellikle Exxon'un girişinden sonra, Chevron'un girişinden sonra bizim geliştirdiğimiz boru hattı nispeten küçük bir boru hattıydı. Sadece Tak üretimini taşıyacak bir hattı. Şimdi daha büyük bütün yol güzergahı üzerindeki sahaların üretimini de kapsayacak bir proje geliştiriyor yönetim. Bu proje bağımsız Türkiye doğrudan bağlanması öngörülen ya da bunun spekülasyonu yapılan bir boru hattı değil. Bu Fişabur'daki Kerkük Yumurtalık boru hattının ölçüm istasyonuna kadar gelecek, oraya bağlanacak. Yani Irak'tan Türkiye'ye gelen biliyorsunuz iki paralel hat var. 70'li ve 80'li yılların başlarında yapılan. Bir tanesi şu an atıl, kullanılmıyor. İşte düşük volümler nedeniyle. Dolayısıyla o hat sistemine bağlanacak. Birinci, yani sorunuzun cevabı bu. Şu an biz bir şey inşa etmiyoruz. Bunun geliştirilen boru hattı ihalesine ne zaman çıkar Kürt yönetimi, kimlerle yapar, nasıl yapılır, hangi zaman sürecinde yapılır onu da bilmiyoruz. Şunu bir kere dikkatinize sunmak isterim açıkçası. Bir takım verileri paylaştık dedim. Bunlar tabii jeolojik veriler, siyasi veriler değil. Fakat enteresan bir şeydir. Bizim kullandığımız bazı haritalarda TPC diye bir amblem vardı. TPC yani eski bu kuzey özellikle Kerkük ve yukarısının sismik ya da jeolojik haritaları 20'li 30'lu yıllarda çıkarılmış. TPC'nin açılımı Turkish Petroleum Company. Onu Türkiye karar mercileri görünce o haritalara heyecanlandılar tabii. 20'li 30'lu yıllarda orada bir Türk petrol şirketi vardı. Bunu tarihten biliyoruz hepimiz. Dolayısıyla genel enerjinin bu şeydeki rolü çok merak edildiği için ikinci bir soru olarak sadece talep edildiğinde teknik bilgi vermekten ibarettir. Teşekkür ederim.
Okay, başka soru, yorum? Sizin var Serpil ama neyse siz başlayın, başkaları da belki gelir. Devam, buyurun.
Pars Bey'e buradan devamla bir şey daha eklemesini rica edeceğim. Kuzey Irak'ta ilk petrol sahası alan şirket Türk şirketleri oldu ve tabii ki genel enerjiydi. Fakat daha sonra sayılarının bugün 46'ya ulaştığını bildiğimiz